This was a topic about when America should go back to work that came up in an interview you did with Bloomberg a couple of days ago. And some of the comments have got a lot of coverage since then. I mean, even the vice president there said people will only go back to work based on when the data suggests them being able to go back to work in a healthy, safe way. Yet this week you said we'll gradually bring these people back to see what happens. Some of them will get sick. Some may even die. I don't know. I wondered if you wanted to clarify any of those comments. Do you really think it's worth people going back to work, even if there is a risk they could still get sick?
Well, I would say I was misquoted in that interview. There was a lot of context that was omitted. What I think is that we do need to get people back to work as soon as it is safe to do so. This is not just for economic reasons. Those of us who are been in San Francisco and in lockdown now for almost 2 weeks, it's really not a healthy and enjoyable experience, either physically, mentally, or psychologically. It is devastating economically, especially for low-income workers. So if I were the president, I would be taking the advice of Dr. Fauci, who appears to be a very knowledgeable and experienced and balanced professional, about when it's right to go back to work. But here's the way I look at this. I think actually San Francisco and the Bay Area is a good test case. We don't know a lot about the virus, but we do know that there have been countries around the world who went into very serious lockdown, just like the Bay Area has done. And after about a month or so, it appears that you see a bend in the curve, and the virus appears to be under somewhat control. We don't know what happens until they go back to work again, and that was the point that I was trying to make. There is risk, of course, whenever you go back to work. But within a month, China, South Korea, Singapore, and Taiwan have started to put their people back to work. I think the Bay Area, if not the first, was certainly one of the first to put the lockdown down, and that was in the middle of March 15th. So the next 2 to 4 weeks, we will either see the bend in the curve or we will not. If we see the bend in the curve, then I think the next step is to do 3 things. To continue the lockdown to the most vulnerable part of the population, which everyone seems to agree is people over 60 years old or so, and especially those who have other difficulties, medical difficulties. Secondly, anybody who is sick or gets sick has to quarantine themselves whenever that occurs. And then thirdly, we should take those that seem to, when they get the virus, that it's more like just flu experience. And that's the vast majority of people who are healthy and under the age of 55 or so. I think they should be allowed to go back to work if they want to go back to work. You don't force them to go back to work. If they're concerned about it, they shouldn't. But if they want to go back to work, but we do it in a very conservative way. We still should have 6 feet between individuals. We should have restaurants that have tables that are 6 feet away. Again, if anyone gets sick, they have to self-quarantine. And we'll see if indeed again, this is when we think that the curve, or not think, we know the curve has bent, and see what kind of response we get. If it seems to be going well, we continue to allow more people to come back. If it isn't, you stop again and go back into lockdown. Now, that's what I basically said in the interview. It didn't come out that way.
Well, glad that you got to clarify. You said a lot there. First, on the flu, I mean, you're not the only one that has made this comparison, but the truth is, and we showed the mortality rate, this is at least 10 times more deadly than the flu and a lot more contagious. And all the doctors are saying that. So it's hard to make that comparison. The other thing I would say about your idea is, while San Francisco may be flattening, the U.S. as a whole is not bending or flattening the curve. And the problem is you do have places like New York where if you start to tell people to go back to work before the virus has peaked, the doctors say, and there's new research from Northwestern on this, then that could come at the expense of people's lives. And we do not
I don't think you
that.
heard me. I said that you don't go back to work until the curve is bent, and you use San Francisco or some other area. I'm not saying the whole nation goes back to work. I'm saying we have a unique
Right. But the problem is,
here.
even if San Francisco does, I mean, it's hard. Look, if in one place, you can't isolate San Francisco. We have, all the states are going to get it.
No, I don't think that's correct. In these other countries, they have gone national when indeed the areas have been under control. We're seeing that. And I think you're also wrong about the mortality rate, perhaps. A bunch of Stanford professors just came out and said the reason the mortality rate, and I don't know what the mortality rate is. I don't think anyone knows. But they came out and said the reason it looks high is because we have not correctly determined how many people had the virus. They think it could be under 1%. I don't know the answer. What I do know is I think we have to use data, analytics, and what is happening, and we have to see what happens as we move from a total isolation and lockdown into another arena. And I think San Francisco would be a good example. And if it doesn't work in San Francisco, then we know it's not going to work someplace else. But I'm not saying New York should do it by any means. You've got to bend the curve before you do any of this.
It's an important debate and a difficult one with no clear answers at this moment. A different topic, Dick, I also wanted to ask you about where you're...
and get his advice on how we should go back to work. And I believe something like this would be his suggestion, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I agree with you on that. Dr. Fauci, everyone likes to trust. I just want to ask you about bank stocks as well, Dick, which we can certainly come to you on as a clear expert on. Am I right in saying that you, like the current CEO of Wells Fargo, Charlie Scharf, have been buying Wells Fargo stock in the last couple of weeks, and other bank stocks as well, in your case?
Yes, again, none of us know what's going to happen with the economy, but certainly the banks their PE ratios are low, their dividends and yields are good. They're in great shape from a capital standpoint, and now one of the areas that they were having trouble with was loans, and it looks like they'll be making lots of loans now. So I think they are at a bottom, and they would be one of many areas of that the market is today. That if and when you decide to go in the market, it certainly should include banks.
Dick, as always, a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.